Alright, hello everyone. We're here at Skyscraper Games and we're going to do a quick start lesson 1. We'll be going through multiple quick start lessons. At the end of each one, I will save the code we've written to a file that you can use, or you can follow along and write your own as we go. So that way you can skip lessons or check your code against the code that I write and provide to you. So we're going to start by going to skyscrapergames.com. And when we get there, I want to click on Editor. If you haven't logged in already, you can see I'm already logged in, but if you haven't already logged in, you'll need to go to Profile. Instead of saying log out, it should say log in. And we're going to get an empty code window. Now it says it's empty, but there's actually some lines of code already in here. These are the lines of code that the game needs to run at a bare minimum, and so it's provided for us kind of like a template. This class my game is just a game that you can play on the skyscraper. Now when I click run, it's going to call this function awake. You see that's called once when the program starts up. There's a start function that you can use so that you can make your game restart if the player dies or fails. And then there's an update function which you use to update the logic of your program or game. And finally, the draw function where you actually draw on the skyscraper. So a couple important things to remember about Python is that spelling is important, and writing things exactly the way they're specified is important. So capitalization matters, and also spacing, how things are spaced on here. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So at the top, you see this first line says from Sierra.SierraGame import star. So there's a library out there called Sierra Game that has a lot of useful functions for us so that we don't have to write those every time ourselves. And we can use those to do things like draw on the skyscraper. Now if I look at my skyscraper over here on the right, you can see that it's made up of dots, which we'll call pixels. And each pixel has an X and a Y coordinate. So the X goes from left to right. It starts at 0 in the top left and goes all the way over to 19 on the right side. So there are 20 of those dots, 0 to 19. And then the Y coordinate goes from the top down to the bottom. So the top left is Y position 0, and then the very bottom is Y position 22. So there are 23 of those pixels. All right, so what we're going to do first is pretty simple. Just draw a dot sort of in the middle of the skyscraper. So to do that, I'm going to use something from the Sierra game. So it's going to be Sierra.display.putPixel, and you see that the P in pixel has to be capitalized. So that's a function, and in that function, I need to give it 5 arguments. So the first one is the X position where I want to draw. So I said it goes from 0 to 19, so we'll put it at 9, which is about in the middle. The second is the Y position. I said Y goes 0 to 22, so we'll just put that at 11, almost the middle. Then the last 3 are going to be red, green, and blue values. So these have to be numbers between 0 and 255. If you have a 0, that means none of that color is present. If you have a 255, that means it's as much of that color as you can get. So I'm going to make red 0. I'm going to make my green 0. I'm going to make my blue 255. And when I click run, this should give me a blue dot right there, almost in the middle of the screen. All right? And so that's it for Quick Start Lesson 1. We're just drawing a dot and putting it, a blue dot in the middle of the skyscraper. Now if you want to play around with different colors, if you look online, there's all kinds of what they call HTML color pickers. I just picked this one. If I come over here, I can look. Let's say I want to make this kind of an orangish color. I just click where the orange is and I can look, and my red is 250, green is 183, and blue is 50. So 250, 183, and 50. Let me change this. 250, 183, 50. Run that and you can see now I get this little orange color. Alright, so you can play around with the different colors a little bit and see what happens. You can also play around with the X and Y variables and see what happens when you move that. I'm going to reset everything here so that we're ready for the next lesson. So it's going to be a blue dot right in the middle. Alright, you can move on to Quick Start Lesson 2 whenever you're ready.